All right, welcome to Ionan's Edge, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today as I am reviewing the Medford knife and tool OnBelay. This is my first Bruiser knife that I'll be reviewing on the channel. Hopefully you'll enjoy this review. So let's jump right in with basic specs. We've got a drop point S35 VN blade. It has a black coating on the blade. It is a manually deployed knife by use of a flipper tab here and also by use of a blade cutout. There is 3.75 inches of usable fine cutting edge on this flat grind knife. The knife uses titanium scales. It is a frame lock, as you can see. It's riding on phosphor bronze bushings. So again, not a fidget knife, but a real world hard use type of knife. It is 4.5 inches from the tip to the center of the pivot. The scale length on this knife is just a skosh over 5 1/8. And the overall tip to tail length of this knife is 9 1/4 inches. So yes, this is a pretty good size knife. And the weight of this knife on my digital scale was 9.15 ounces. So it's definitely got some heft to it, folks. You know you're carrying this knife in your pocket. Let's jump right in with what I like. First, let me say my first impressions of this knife, are that it's a beautiful knife. Matter of fact, it's a gorgeous knife. The materials and the overall build quality of this knife, the fit and finish, and especially this US flag that they put on the side, it is all top notch. The flag, folks, it is stunning looking. It is just, this video does not do it justice. Let's just put it that way. The ergos on this knife are very good. You've got solid ergos here. There's plenty of handle here for just about any size hand. No matter how big your hands are, you're probably going to be able to hold this in normal position. There is a cutout here. I don't really, honestly, it's not a finger choil to me. And this knife, being in the hands of somebody with bigger hands, would say absolutely not. It's more of a sharpening choil. And it's really nice. It's got plenty of depth to it to let you get a long time out of this blade and not sharpen up into the grind itself. So overall, big plus for that. Like I said, good solid ergos. The knife is pretty thick. It's got a nice pocket clip on it made out of tie. I like that a lot. It does have a lanyard loop on the back of it. Now, I'll talk about that at the end of the video. But overall, again, this knife has really good solid ergos, feels great in your hand. All the machining on it was done really well. I like how they did these extra little chamfers right back here where your back fingers tend to ride, or it would, if you had bigger hands, maybe your third finger, but that's really nice. You can feel that, but it's just very positive engagement. So ergonomically, design-wise, the knife is really cool. It's a great looking knife for a large knife. It's got a great look to it. So let's talk about a couple of other things here. You can deploy it by two methods. So it has a flipper tab, and that works good. You saw me deploy it by flicking the blade cutout. I actually prefer the blade cutout, even though this is a bigger knife, over the flipper tab. The flipper tab, you gotta really kind of make sure that you put some extra effort into it. Again, that's gonna be a personal preference, but I actually find myself liking spidey flicking this knife out. Seems to be the best deployment method for me. That says a lot, considering I am not that great at spidey flicking knives. I typically tend to like thumb studs or flipper tabs just because they're easier for me to deploy. But I found on this knife, even though it's riding on bearings and a frame lock, and the D10 is pretty strong on this for the size, appropriately for the size knife it is, this knife fires out there really well if you are using the blade cutout. So that was my preferred method. Your mileage on that may vary. The thing that also surprised me about this titanium pocket clip is really well built. It has just the right amount of flex in it and a little bit of give. It doesn't really seem to grab your pants too hard or anything like that. And there's plenty of space under there to get whatever size clothing you're wearing. I would think maybe if you were wearing insulated thermals or something like that in the winter, you might see a little bit of issue with that spacing, but for, I would say 99% of the carrying that most people are going to do, this pocket clip will fit very nicely and will be a great EDC item for most people. Again, I love the functionality overall of the knife. And here's the other thing too. When I first got the knife, like I really wanted to check one of these out. When I first got the knife, I was kind of like, I don't know, this might just be, just too big for me to actually enjoy. But this knife has grown on me in the short time that it's been on loan to me from my good friend Satu Dave. I have really, really enjoyed this knife. It feels very positive in your hand. It's handled every single cutting task I've put it through. I have diced up some cardboard with it. I have whittled down some shavings off of a 2x4 that you'd probably use to make a fire with. I've cut a few other things since I've had it, which hasn't been a very long time. But all I did was just very lightly restrop this blade. I did not try to sharpen it because it's not my knife. But that's all it really needed. It held the working edge perfectly fine through that whole thing. And then I just very lightly stropped the edges a couple times, like 3 passes on each side, and it's great. So kudos for the overall design, and the actual usability of the knife is extremely high. So again, thumbs up for that as well. Are there any issues or dislikes? I only really find one sort of issue or dislike with this knife. The balance point on this knife is way back. It's actually back here behind where this front forward index finger scalloping is. It's over 1.5 inches behind the pivot point. Kind of makes sense. It's a really big knife. It has really big, long, thick, super thick titanium scales. So there's a lot of metal back here. It is positive in your hand. All the weight does feel kind of right here in the center point of where you hold the knife between these 3 fingers. So it's not unpleasant, but it is not what I would call a well-balanced knife. The other thing is more of a personal preference. It's not an issue for me per se. This is a huge knife. You're not going to not be able to get your hands on this. I'm not really sure if a lanyard loop is a functional necessary item on this knife. It's there. They give you that option, which is fantastic, but it's not really necessary. I kind of think it's an irrelevant thing. I mean, if I had bigger hands and my hand was more back toward the palm swell, I think I might notice that. But they did kind of bevel this out really nice, and it's not in the way, so to speak. So I'll give them a pass on that as well. Truly, those are the only things I can really pick up. The balance point, and maybe you don't need a lanyard loop, but it's nice, I guess, to include one. Otherwise, this knife is a winner. This knife has grown on me in just the short time I've borrowed it. And it's, man, I really believe that this is a great design for this size knife. It's in the Bruiser category, but it's not humongously huge, but it is still a very big knife. So let me summarize real quick. The standard version of this knife is $615, which is a pretty penny to spend for a knife. As an overall design, it's great. And the build quality and fit and finish is all a grand slam. I mean, I know this one's more expensive because it has the flag on the side of it. I'm not sure exactly what this goes for, but I would say it's probably another $150 or $200 more, probably at a minimum. But man, this is just a rugged knife, right? If you're looking for a big, beefy, chunky, rugged folding knife, this is the ticket right here. On a personal level, this category of Bruiser knives is just too big for me personally as an everyday carry knife. And I get it. I get some of the guys like Dave and some other people I know with bigger hands. They like carrying this, fits them really well. But it's just a little bit too big for me. I love everything about this knife except for the size. That's the only thing. If they made this knife in a slightly smaller version, I would have to own one for sure. So let me wrap up by doing a couple quick size comparisons. So here's our OnBelay. Here's a knife that a lot of people at least are familiar with. This is the Petrified Fish 949. This is the full-size one. So you can see it is longer. It is a lot thicker than the Petrified Fish. So let's see if we can find something a little closer. Let's go with the Kubi 322, which is basically the poor man's Arius, right? Same basic size as the Arius. You can see we're pretty close there with what we got, right? As far as overall length and kind of blade size, similar. But again, no comparison is in terms of the width of the knives, the thickness of the blade stock, the thickness of the handles, okay? And then one I think that's pretty close in the size range, and this is one of my personal favorites, and this is kind of the biggest size knife I like to carry. This is the Benchmade Presidio2 in carbon fiber. So there you go. So that is pretty darn close to what the OnBelay is. Similar handle widths, pivot to pivot, similar blade lengths. But again, this knife is way thinner stock. This is a much bigger, beefier, stronger knife in every way, shape, and form, and obviously quite a bit heavier. This, I think this comes in at around 3¼ ounces, and this one here is 9.15. So again, there's a big difference in weight, size, and overall material thicknesses on the OnBelay. Well, there you go, folks. I'm not going to ramble on any longer. This is the Medford Knives OnBelay on loan to me from my good friend Satu Dave. Thank you, Dave. Much appreciated for the chance to handle this knife. If you like big knives, if you're looking for a Bruiser class knife that has great fit and finish, good ergos, and is going to last you for a lifetime, this might be for you, folks. All right, that's all I got for today. Have a great day, evening, morning, whatever it is for you when you watch this. Also, I'd like to thank you once again for watching. Please consider hitting the like and the subscribe button down there in the bottom for me. I could always use your support. And as always, stay sharp.